right? That's where that was. The two hemispheres are going to be on this side. This is that falx cerebri with the superior sagittal sinus between it, right in there, yep. And then see this little wall between where the cerebellum is and the cerebrum? Yeah. That's called the tentorium cerebelli. Kind of looks like a tent a little bit.
Okay.
Right? Tentorium cerebelli. Is it filming right now?
Yeah.
All right. So, what we could do now is just get rid of the rest of the dura from the brain stem. And this can kind of just slide off. We're not, if I was being real delicate, you could see like all these little things are cranial nerves, but we're not looking at all of them, so we're just going to peel that off. And over here, the problem is, without being careful, we're going to do it anyway. We're going to rip off the pituitary gland, but I'll try to keep the optic chiasm here if I can. Let's try to get under there. Oops. It's one thing you don't even want to hear a surgeon say. Oops.
Oops.
Can you say again what is this wall is called?
Yeah, the tentorium cerebelli, between where the cerebellum would be and the cerebral hemispheres.
Yeah.
Tentorium cerebelli. This is the falx cerebri, between the two hemispheres of the cerebrum. Okay, so now there's more cranial nerves. You can see them. No more eye movement for this guy. Okay, so we can kind of make out there's still dura in there, but the optic chiasm. You can see as we come down. This is like the hypothalamus. So the pituitary attached right here. This little stalk that I pulled off, right in that little spot. That's the mammillary body right there. So this little area, that's the hypothalamus. That's it. Midbrain. Remember in the midbrain there we have cranial nerve 3, oculomotor nerve. Oops. This came from the midbrain. So this is just what we call the cerebral peduncles. They hold up the cerebrum, this part of the midbrain. This bulge right here, pons, medulla, spinal cord. Okay, and then you should be able to identify the lobes. Right, you can kind of see the temporal lobes are on the side. The central sulcus is really, there's only one sulcus that kind of does come straight across like this. That would be it right there. You can't really see the pre and post central gyrus so well. I won't ask it on here. On the brain you can on the model. Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobes are back here if I point back here. Cerebellum. All right. We already talked about olfactory nerve 1, cranial nerve 2. You guys want to come here for 1 second? I just want to show you something. Before we cut it in half, there's a part on your list that says right down here, retract cerebellum. I forgot to mention that because then everybody asked me, where's the retract cerebellum located? But basically, it's telling you to retract the cerebellum, pull it back like this. And then what you're going to see, this one's a little bit damaged for some reason. It's unusual. Okay, normally when you pull this back, it kind of looks like somebody mooning you. The butt right there.
Oh,
okay.
gosh.
So those 4 bumps that you see right there, those 4 bumps, the 2 big ones, the butt, and then the 2 underneath it, that's the corpora quadrigemma. That's the back of the midbrain. Quad for 4. Corpora, 4 bodies. Get that? Good job. Okay, the corpora quadrigemma right back here. And then if you retract it even further, look right above the butt there. You see that little structure in there? That is the pineal gland.
Okay,
you see it there? That's the pineal gland. Everybody got that? You see it up there? Above my thumb up there? Okay, all the way on top, the pineal gland. Okay, they'll email it to you. Post it. Okay. So what you're going to do next, once you identify all the structures on the outside, is to take the scalpel. Just grab yours here. And this part you got to be a little bit careful because you don't want to start slicing the thing up. It's a nice new blade at least, but I would like to get these longer blades because you don't want to be cutting again and again, because you're going to slice on different planes and it's going to chop it all up. So you want to try to make one clean cut or just a couple, but be real careful that they're in the same plane. So the way that I like to do it is I'm kind of spreading the cerebellum. You don't have to worry about too much. We'll cut that after. But the cerebrum, I just kind of go into the longitudinal fissure, and these should be nice sharp scalpels. I could just sort of let it go a little bit. I'm just opening it up a little bit at a time through the hemisphere. There's not too much to see there, but we want to get a nice cut through the diencephalon and that thalamus and the corpus callosum and so on. So what I'll do is I'm going to come like this, I'm going to put it in, and I'm going to stand the scalpel up and slice down. And now I can lift it up and I can just pull it towards the front like this. Okay? And now what I'll do is, for the cerebellum, I really actually just squeeze it together in my hands. We'll see that for the cerebellum, it also has really like a right hemisphere, a left hemisphere. It's really a bad word because there's also a middle hemisphere, which doesn't make any sense because hemi means two. But a right lobe, a left lobe, and then we call this middle bulge right here the vermis. That's called the vermis of the cerebellum here. Okay, the hemispheres in the vermis. So I'll just kind of squeeze it together. I go right through the middle of the vermis, and you don't have to worry too much about this. Just come down. I also stand it up, and I'll try to slide right through the middle of the brainstem and the spinal cord. Now, if I separate it, I can see I still got to cut through one little section, and I press all the way down into the, oops, see, I didn't do so great there. I went through two planes, but it's not in a very important area. Okay, and you just got to slice it into two. And now you should be able to see something that looks like that corpus callosum, okay, that little Nike sign there. You should be able to see on both sides. And look what happens when I open this space. You see that space opening up in there? That's the lateral ventricle. Okay, it's going to be back in there. So if I say, what space am I poking into here? That's the lateral ventricle. You can actually see these capillaries sticking out. What do you think those capillaries are? What are the capillary beds inside the ventricle called? The choroid plexus. There it is. So the lateral ventricle has one. It's deep in there. There's actually a little membrane, but the membrane's so thin that it usually just goes to one side of the brain or the other, and you can actually see part of it here where I actually have to go through this membrane, kind of have to pierce it a little bit to get into the lateral ventricle. You see how I did that? Well, not all of you did, but I'm piercing through that little flap, the septum pellucidum, to get into the lateral ventricle. So I could say, like, where's my probe? What space is it in? Lateral ventricle, what membrane does it pass through to get there? The septum pellucidum, the window. So here is the choroid plexus of that lateral ventricle inside. You can see like a top part of the thalamus here. But this is all the thalamus, this circular area just below. Let me back up a second. Corpus callosum, right? You can kind of see it's a little whiter than the tissue around it, the other white matter. This is a tract coming, commissural coming across. And then this is the fornix right here. Okay, I'm sorry, can someone bring me another one of those models? I'm gonna, that's okay, I just want to, you can grab me that one right there, somebody, and I'll just, and give me half, open it. We'll put it right here, I don't want to touch it too much. Okay, so this is the corpus callosum. That's this part up here. And then this bottom part here, this is the fornix. I think it's number 12 on there. And then that's the little flap that would be there, the septum pellucidum. Okay, but it's actually removed here. And I can see inside the lateral ventricle, the choroid plexus capillaries, part of the thalamus in there. This little round area down here, we would call this the thalamus. Okay, this is the thalamus right down here below. And as we move below the thalamus to the bottom part of the brain right here, the floor, you'll see, first of all, this is that optic nerve, remember? So there's the optic chiasm. That's right where it crosses, right in there. And then this would be right, this little area just behind it is where the stalk would be for the pituitary gland, would attach right in here. Okay. I'm actually going to, I can't see it so great on this one. I'm going to grab one more. Pause.